Welcome back to my channel, everyone. So today I want to discuss how movies, the media, TV shows have really warped and messed up our conception of love, specifically romantic love, and given us some false expectations. And I was inspired by a few videos that I saw on YouTube over the years, but I'd never actually covered this topic before. But now I feel that the time is right about how these delusional ideas and childish fantasies can actually hinder our ability to know what's reality and what's fiction. It's fun to be delulu, like that TikTok trend where you're like, oh my gosh, I like to fantasize and be delusional and imagine what this dream life looks like in this dream guy. And it's all fine to escape into fantasy and watch some fun movies like The Notebook. But let's be real here. That could actually mess you up. Today we're discussing meeting the one, insta love, toxic relationships, codependency, and how movies have really weird ways of depicting sex as well. So let's start with the concept of insta love and the spark, and like, what is the spark and how have movies kind of changed this or fed into various inaccurate ideas. So in a lot of movies, because also it's like short, maybe 120 minutes of screen time or 90 minutes, there's not much time to show a couple fall in love. So everything's rushed. We see snapshots of their relationships, and that pace can sometimes influence things for you in real life, because actually it takes years to get to know someone. It'll be a very gradual unfolding. But if you're a big fan of these movies and you have no dating experience, you never had parents talk to you about this, you never really had friends who are in relationships, let's just say you had a very sheltered life, you could have this misconception that it needs to be like that, it needs to be that fast, you need to feel an instant attraction, and you're just together and you have all this clarity about if they're the person for you, and it's really easy therefore to want to rush the process, when in fact it could take multiple dates for you to really feel someone out and get to know them. There's this idea in movies of insta love, instant attraction, and I knew you were the one as soon as I laid my eyes on you. Like, the couple looks at each other from across a bar and they hold eye contact and they're just really drawn to each other, and then they spend a really intense 2 weeks of summer together and they're already somehow like in love, and then they could be separated in The Notebook for like 5 years, but when they get back together again in the matter of a few days they just reconnect like that, and it's just so obvious they're meant to be because it's not the same with anyone else. Like, they can't even look at other options in the same way because there's just this one person that's perfect for you and no one else lives up to them. And if you really take that on board into your real life, that can put a lot of pressure on you. In real life, relationships are not only gradual, but sometimes there are things you need to compensate on, and you can learn and grow together. But sometimes people need a bit of coaching. Not that you try to control or change people, but sometimes you need to give people some feedback about various habits they have that maybe you don't like, or you honestly communicate with each other if someone hurt the other person's feelings, and it's not always smooth sailing. And sometimes the person that you're meant to be with is like the last person you expected. I feel like in most movies, I mean, some do cover like getting out of the friend zone, but for the most part, it's always pretty obvious that you like the person. And it kind of sends the message that if you don't connect with someone like that, if it's not like intense passion, fireworks, and this spark people talk about, then that must mean that you're not meant to be, or that your connection isn't that strong. Researcher Kimberly Johnson said, films do capture the excitement of new relationships, but they also wrongly suggest that trust and committed love exists from the moment people meet, whereas these are qualities that normally take years to develop. And yeah, I agree. Like in The Notebook, they just trust each other immediately, and he's like, hey, do you want to lie on the road together? And she's like, oh, okay. That's not how it works. Like, it takes a while to get to know someone and to trust them, and there's kind of this loyalty that happens often with these couples in movies where they're not really dating anyone else, they just form this attachment to this one person and they will do anything for them, cross any bridge. Like in Bridgerton, they're like, love's the most powerful force in the world, and that doesn't acknowledge that sometimes, although you can really like someone and have a really good feeling about them, you still know that you haven't spent that much time together. So there are certain sacrifices that you're not going to make. You aren't going to give up your whole weekend for them, or maybe text them 24/7, because you're trying to moderate yourself a bit, have some self-control, feel it out and see where it goes. Sometimes you can meet someone that you're meant to be with and you could have such a strong attraction to them or think that they're really attractive, but you may not think that they're the love of your life straight away. You may be like, okay, I mean, they're really attractive, but I don't know, like we had a really nice date, but I'm not sure if they're the one for me. You might not have this psychic ability to like know the minute you meet someone that they're gonna be your husband. Like in fact, you may think, oh cool, but maybe I'm just getting friendship vibes. Like I'm not really sure. But in a lot of these movies, that's not the case. It's like, oh my God, I just met my wife today. And I have heard stories of that happening where couples meet each other and within literally 5 minutes, they're telling their friends, I just met my future wife, like I'm gonna marry her. And they're correct and they go on to marry that person. But that doesn't represent every single situation. Real life requires work, and no person is going to be completely perfect and give you 100% of what you need. You may really like someone, but then find out that they're a smoker and be like, damn it, I don't like smokers, I don't want to date someone who smokes. Or maybe you really like them, but then you find out that their money management skills don't really align with yours, and you're like, ugh, is this a deal breaker? Is this something that I can work with? Whatever. And sometimes that can make the whole dating process really confusing, and movies don't really cover that. And there is so much internal healing that needs to happen in order for you to be ready for a relationship, and often movies don't cover that. But a really great quote, I think it's by Rumi, is don't seek for love, instead seek to understand the barriers you have built against it. E.g., are you avoiding love? In what ways are you looking for something wrong with someone? Like, do you have an avoidant attachment style? Whatever the case may be. But movies are just too idealistic and surface level and push this idea of the spark. So we meet, chemistry's off the charts, and now there's a difference between the spark and chemistry, obviously, but in these movies, when they talk about the spark, it's this idea of like, we have something we can't explain, and often it's like a really intense connection and like all-consuming, and they're just really drawn to each other. And the term the spark, I feel, is used very flippantly, and it's used in different contexts. So sometimes it's hard to know what people mean by the spark. But I feel like the spark is an unhealthy expectation when, let's say in real life, you reject someone because you say there's no spark, but all that happened is you just went out like once and you had all these overly high expectations for them to take you to like a 5-star restaurant and give you roses and a Gucci handbag, and then like go on the most amazing walk of your entire life and have the most profound conversations and kiss under the Eiffel Tower, like literally the most rose-tinted thing, and you just met this person like an hour ago, and then they don't do all these things for you, and you're like, oh, there wasn't a spark. Or it was like nice and you felt positive towards them, but you weren't like head over heels, so you assume that something's wrong, when in fact you just met this person. And sometimes chemistry takes a bit of time to develop. So I think that's where the issue with the spark comes in terms of people's expectations. However, I do think that obviously if you're going to be with someone for a long time, you would hope that there would be like a lot of chemistry. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I want someone who I feel attracted to. I want to be with someone who is my physical type or who I like the look of. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable request. But at the same time, you just need to make sure that you're not being like too close-minded to the possibilities, or that maybe someone could surprise you. Like maybe you think you like guys with brown hair, and then the guy that you date actually has red hair and he's not your usual type because he's Irish or something, and then you're like, wait, I really like him. That happens, you know, you are surprised. In a lot of these movies, it's like they're both really conventionally attractive people who fall in love, and there's this intense chemistry, and often the guy's like 6'4", and I see all this stuff on social media of, oh, I just need a really tall guy and he needs to look like this and have these exact features and dress in the old money style in this way. And to me, again, that's just like narrowing your options more and more. Like in certain countries, only let's say 20% of guys are 6 foot or over, so you're then ruling out like 80% of the other options. And instead of looking for someone you're attracted to, you're just looking for height, like as a blanket term. There's nothing wrong with wanting a tall guy or wanting a short girl or whatever the case may be, but sometimes it feels like excuses and prioritizing and valuing the wrong surface level things as opposed to the actually important things and important deal breakers. And it's a good idea sometimes to look at your expectations and things you want and say which of these are realistic expectations or like nice add-ons and which are actually compulsory, like my non-negotiables. Because sometimes it's just like fun things like, oh, I would really like it if he has brown eyes, and it's not really that big a deal to me, I could take it or leave it. But other times it's really important, like, no, he has to have a good relationship with his parents or something, and for whatever reason you really value that and you're not going to compensate on it, and that's fair enough. But I've noticed on social media and stuff all these trends of like, he needs to do this and ditch him if he does this, and the whole if he wanted to he would mentality, and be a dark feminine, and he has to ask you out. And it's like you're going to get so in your head about it, about the way things should be, rather than just allowing a connection to unfold naturally and appreciating that every single dynamic, every single person will be different. And Prince Charming Disney movies instill in us this idea of soulmates. I think there was a study that like 75% of Americans believe in the idea of a soulmate, your one true love, that in a lifetime there is only one person for you that's out there that you could love, and you have to spend the rest of your life searching for them. And if you don't, then like you failed or whatever. And okay, I get it. The concept in itself is inherently romantic, like that whole Greek story of like a soul, like a creature with like 4 body parts or something, and it's split in half, and so we're always in search of our other half who completes us. Like, I get the romanticism of it, and it's nice to think when you found that person, like, yes, you know, I've been waiting my whole life for you and we're such a good match. West Side Story, the Titanic, Romeo and Juliet, it all pushes this narrative, especially when like one of them dies, like with what happened to Jack, and Rose is never really happy with someone in that same way, and then in heaven she's reunited with Jack. It's all about this destined, meant to be narrative. Now, I personally believe in some cases that you can find someone and have such a weirdly profound connection to them. It's as if you were supposed to meet, or like you're just obviously such a good match that it feels fated, you know, and I totally believe in that. But I think because of these movies and making it seem really important, placing this value on it, if you yourself hyperfixate on that too much in dating, it can make dating like a really stressful thing as opposed to a fun thing, and can also like really blind your judgment, because you come into like every single interaction, and rather than going, okay, I'm a person, he's a person, let's get to know each other, it's like, are you my husband? Are you my soulmate? Like, what are the signs? Are we meant to be? And it's just really intense. Like, rather than getting to know someone, seeing how they make you feel, what you think of their qualities, like asking them some questions, just letting things unfold as they should and trusting in that, you're putting this immense amount of pressure on yourself to see like if they're the one for you, and that you need to know within like a certain amount of time. And like, what if you make a mistake and pick the wrong one? And it affects your ability to get to know that person naturally, and it could also lead to much greater disappointments then if they don't live up to your romanticized expectations of who you wanted them to be, and then you're like, oh damn it, you know. Whereas if you just weren't thinking ahead so much, maybe it wouldn't be like quite as painful. And of course you can date with intention, you can date with marriage in mind, but there's a way of doing it where you're not stressing yourself out. And if you keep placing this value on, I need them to be the one, it could result in you overlooking red flags, or finding someone and really desperately wanting them to be the one, and then trying to force certain qualities on them or make them into someone they're not, rather than just seeing them for who they are and just like looking at that and saying, okay, is that the kind of person I want to be with? But instead you're trying to like project qualities onto them or mother them. Again, in terms of this whole expectations, insta love thing, there's also this formula that movies follow. I learned about it in screenwriting class in a lot of rom-coms of like guy meets girl, guy messes up with girl, and then guy has to win girl back. It's all very much centered around the man wooing, pursuing, and then often doing some grand romantic gesture like How to Lose the Guy in 10 Days, where one of them chases down the other in the middle of the road and is like, wait, stop, come back. Or like at the end of Romancing the Stone, where the girl's waiting around for this guy to come back and she doesn't know like if he's dead or not, and then he pulls up in the middle of the street with this boat that's like supported on a truck with a massive bouquet of flowers to like woo her, and he's like, hey, here's the boat, we can sail the world together. Like, so dramatic. Or think of Pretty Woman, where Julia Roberts is chilling at home wondering if she's going to end up with this guy, and then he arrives in a limousine, like leaning out the top of the car with a bouquet of roses, and then climbs up the ladder even though he's scared of heights to prove to her that he'll do anything for her. Like, it's all these like big romantic gestures to like prove how much you want to be with someone. And that's all well and good, and we love a good romantic moment. And no, chivalry is not dead. There's plenty of guys out there that will do cute gestures to make you feel seen and heard and blah blah blah. However, when again there's this expectation of this is how things need to be, you can end up like really badly disappointed that he doesn't deliver you this beautiful monologue like Mr. Darcy of, you know, I love you most ardently, I never wish to be parted from you from this day on, like just these proclamations of love. And every guy is different, every person, every girl is different. Some may be really good at like the actions, like bringing you a gift or bringing you, you know, planning your a surprise party for you, but they may not be very eloquent, and they might not be good at like verbally doing this beautiful poetry. And some guys may write you like beautiful poems and love letters, but they may have failings in other areas, you know, like everyone's different. But this formula of guy chases girl, guy does A, B, and C, it's this very gendered thing I've noticed in a lot of these movies, where it is often like the guy pursuing, making the effort, organizing the dates, and then trying to win the girl back in the end. And to me, like, and same with the fairy tales, it's always the prince that rescues the princess. And it's just very like, I have a very complicated relationship with this topic. I mean, I do think, of course, to an extent that you should feel met by the person you're seeing, and it's nice when a guy like, you know, makes a move. And I would never commend to any girl to be chasing a guy and continually calling him, texting him, he's not responding. However, relationships should be reciprocal. They should be two-way. And if you, as let's say a woman, are so set on the man needs to pursue and be a gentleman and do this, and it's making you like be cold and just sit around and wait for him to do something in like this judgmental way, or like, yeah, I didn't ask for his Instagram because he should ask first, or yeah, I didn't text him, that's his job, I like it when the guy does it. It's actually very disempowering, because you really like someone, you want them to do something, and then rather than just like, you know, I'm not saying like embarrass yourself, but you could reach out and you could be warm, you could be approachable, you could do a little hint to let them know you're interested, and instead you're just like sitting back waiting for them to call you, organize it, reach out, see you, say something that they need to compliment you first, you never compliment them, and it's just like you're literally handing all your power over to that person, kind of suspended in this state of waiting. And I just personally think that's really silly, and relationships can be like an equal push and pull. There should never be one chaser and one runner. Like, you know, you should both be very much invested in making it work. I'm not saying as a girl that you need to like bend over backwards for someone, not at all. And I think that if a guy isn't showing his interest, then like honestly forget it, because that you're not meant to be together, then that's ridiculous. But these movies are just pushing this very weird, like old-fashioned almost dynamic, and I just don't believe that anymore. Like, if you see someone that you like at a restaurant, bar, whatever, a party, just go up and say hi. Like, you don't need to ask for their number and say they're the love of your life, but you can just talk to them. give them a smile. Like, it's not, there's nothing disempowering about that. Another issue I have with these movies is how they depict love, meeting the one, and that love will just show up on your doorstep. In most of these movies, the girl isn't even really looking for love, or it's just like a passing thought she has, like, wouldn't it be nice if I met the love of my life? And he literally materializes. Like, she'll be it's actually really funny, like in The Choice or whatever it's called, I don't know, they all sound the same, a Nicholas Sparks movie. This girl goes to like this bull riding competition and then sees the guy performing, and she's like, oh my god, it's him. And then afterwards she realizes she likes him, and then she's just standing outside after the event, chilling, waiting for her friend, and then he just appears and happens to go outside at the same time as her, and he talks to her and they start up a conversation, you know. Or Notting Hill, like, this guy's walking down the street and the girl walks right into him and he spills his juice all down her, and oh my god, I guess you're gonna have to come to my place so I can help you. And it's presented as this very much fated thing of love will find you when you least expect it. And of course that happens in real life all the time. People bump into each other, you know, at a party, society, bar, whatever. However, I don't like it when movies push this narrative that it's like easy and that you can literally be the most introverted person ever and never leave your house. Like in Romancing the Stone, the main girl is a writer and she is so introverted. She just stays at home and writes about romance, hoping one day it will find her. And then her sister's kidnapped and she's pulled into it, and through the kidnapping meets the love of her life. And I'm like, come on. Like, because she happened to be traveling to go like find her sister, and then this guy like saves her when she's nearly shot and happens to be there at the right time. Okay, it does happen, but not that often. And the truth is that the logistics of meeting the one, it can take a lot of effort. And I don't mean that you're living your life to find someone, but as in you need to leave the house. Like, he's not going to be your next door neighbor like in Emily in Paris. I mean, maybe he is, but like not that often. You need to go out. You need to get involved in your local community, do activities that you feel passionate about, whether it's joining your local gym or cooking class or whatever, or you download a dating app. I don't know. You take various actions, and it normally arises from you like leaving the house, or you know someone who knows someone. And I think that the issue with these movies is then people are really sad and confused or think love is dead when they're not meeting anyone, and they're not like trying, but they just think that, oh, it will happen. Like, if I'm just really passive, somehow the stars will align. And like, no, like, you can't stay like in your room for the 5th night in a row, or like be like closed off and cold. Like, that's the thing in a lot of these movies too, is often the guy's pursuing the girl and the girl is like just not very approachable, isn't really looking for a relationship, and she's quite closed off, and she's like, I don't want to date you. And the guy's like, please go on a date, I'll do anything. And he'll follow her around and basically beg for a date. Most of the time that doesn't happen in real life either. Like, if a guy's making an effort and a girl's continually being like, no, if he has respect for her boundaries, he will give up and he will stop trying. And again, there's this concept in movies of falling in love, as if it's not a conscious choice. It's this idea of, I had no control over my actions. I didn't expect to fall in love with you, and I did. It just sort of happened, and I was powerless to stop it. Or especially in the enemies to lovers thing, where it's like they're on opposite ends of this war and they fall in love, and like one of them's kind of an asshole, but it just happens, and then they just stay together. That's not how it works. Like, if you're evaluating someone and you're seeing that they don't have qualities that you like, you don't just accidentally fall into love. You can, if you have the maturity, make a decision to create a bit of separation when you think about it between you and that person. Maybe see them less often and not get so pulled into it if you think they might be bad for you, you know? And there is a certain extent of love being within our control. Like, and or you could genuinely like fall in love for someone and have these undeniably strong, passionate feelings for them and just get carried away. But after a few weeks, a few months, a few years, you will notice that they're not perfect and they may be a bit messy or have various issues, trauma, whatever. At that point then, love is a conscious choice. It's waking up every day and saying, I'm still choosing to commit to this person. I'm not just going to give up on them and go find someone who seems easier and think the grass is greener on the other side, or your head shouldn't just be turned by your cute secretary that easily and you just go have an affair. No, true love is like actually seeing someone, understanding someone for everything that they are, and still sticking by them. It's a conscious, like, you at any point you could just give up and walk away. Like, you know, with a boyfriend, you might just be like, oh, you know what, I can't be bothered, because it's not always going to be smooth sailing and perfect, especially if you've been together for years and maybe there's an issue that arises. It's about consciously making time to organize dates and think, how can I make this person feel special today? How can I take care of them? How can I make sure that I'm like treating them well and not taking them for granted? And this is something I don't like on social media. I'm seeing a lot, is this whole ick trend of what's something a guy does that gives you an ick. Oh, when he ties his shoelace wrong, like when he gets a little bit of food in his teeth at a restaurant and doesn't notice, like when he carries this type of bag, it gives me an ick. Like, sometimes there are legitimate icks, like he never, like he has no protective instinct, right? That's a legitimate ick, like that's a problem. But if you're just finding an ick with like really silly things about someone just being human, that's actually so incredibly mean-spirited. And I've noticed it's often like women making comments like this, and can we please stop? Because like, it's not nice. Another thing I've noticed in movies I want to talk about is the glorification of toxic, abusive, or hurtful relationships, and this glamorization of angsty love. Movies, shows like, perfect example is The Summer I Turned Pretty, push this idea that if something's really hard, if a guy's going through something and needs therapy, if he's not really, you're kind of breaking up a lot and your breakups don't really make any sense, or he just doesn't really validate you, the more difficult it is and dramatic, the more fights you have, the more it means that you're meant to be. And that easy love is boring. Like, if someone's got good communication skills and actually shows up on time, boring. And because we've romanticized so much this roller coaster of emotions, unhealthy, unpredictable relationships, it makes people think that they should look for that in real life. And it's good if there's all this drama and like you gossiping about them with your friends and them doing all this shady stuff. No. That's not what relationships are. And I made, if you're interested, I made a whole video about like Draco Malfoy and the bad boy trope, which I really go into depth on this topic. But this whole romanticization of the bad boy in the media, who's literally just an immature man child who wears a leather jacket, like that is so ridiculous that this is what has been pushed on us as sexy. Like in the recent romance movies like 50 Shades of Grey and After, where the dude is just some weirdo who has no respect for female boundaries and is blatantly rude and just walks into her room whenever when she's wearing a towel and doesn't give a shit and doesn't leave when she asks him to and makes digs at her or whatever. That is not romantic, but it's sold to us as romantic, and it's like teaching us to tolerate abuse, especially as women, and that we should just put up with it, or that if you just keep trying with someone who's treating you badly, one day they'll change and see how great you are and be kind to you. No, it doesn't work like that. A lot of these unhealthy behaviors are reframed as romantic. For example, in The Notebook, when Ali doesn't want to go out with Noah, he says, I'm literally going to kill myself if you don't go out with me. And he hangs from the Ferris wheel with one hand until she literally screams and says, fine, fine, I'll go out with you. Like, he pressures her into it. Think of that scene, I don't know what the movie is. I think it's Crazy Love or something, Crazy Stupid Love. But it's this movie with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. They've been in a lot of movies together, but she's at a bar with her friend. He approaches her, and the entire scene is horrendously uncomfortable. He only gets away with it because he's attractive and charming. He's literally pressuring her, trying to bulldoze her into going out with him and going home with him and being like, oh, I find you very attractive, don't you find me attractive? And she's like, no, I don't want to. And he's like, oh, don't you want to go out with me? Hey, friend, like, what's her name? Can she go out with me? And just going. And it's reframed as like this subtly flirty banter, like she secretly wants him. And I'm like, oh my God, if that happened in real life, I couldn't think of anything worse. Like, the dude is not taking the hint. And the romanticization of sexual assault and coercion, like Jess and Rory from Gilmore Girls, where he's in a bad mood and he wants to have sex, so he thinks it's an appropriate moment to keep pushing for it after she explicitly is uncomfortable and is asking him not to. And then he yells at her. Like, what is that? Like, how is that romantic? Or him ghosting her multiple times, and it's reframed as like, oh, it's beautiful because he's so passionate and just didn't know how to handle his feelings. Like, no, it's just disrespectful. And the romanticization of stalking, like in Twilight, where Edward just watches Bella all the time while she sleeps and follows her around because he wants to take care of her. No, he's a freaking creep and he had no right to do that. Or in The Fifth Wave, where that guy follows our main character around because he says he just wanted to keep her safe. But like, it's just a little bit weird. Like, what a weird thing to do. Why is he so obsessed with this girl he doesn't know? He saw her from a distance with binoculars. Like, who cares? Or in The Lucky One, Zac Efron sees this girl in a photo and believes that she saved his life somehow. So he goes to find her, meets her, they start dating. And he's literally lying to her about the fact that he kind of already knew who she was, like his intentions for arriving in the town. Like, he never really told her why he was there. That's a really creepy, dishonest thing to do. Or this idea that you can change a man, like for instance Gilmore Girls, Logan and Rory. He says he's a player, says he's not ready for a relationship. She says, okay, I'll go along with it because I don't really care. And luckily he ends up changing. But I mean, what are the odds? Like, most of the time it's a sign that you're not meant to be, because one person is a relationship kind of person, the other just wants to mess around. Normally it ends up in a situationship, not a relationship, majority of the time. Think of in Dear John with Channing Tatum and Amanda Seyfried, when they're dating and John's like this anger management, emotionally unavailable guy, but Amanda's character is the one girl who can soothe him and make him feel better. No, like, he needs to go to therapy. Savannah, the girl, she breaks up with Channing Tatum's character to be with this guy called Tim, but then Tim dies of cancer, and it's used as this really insensitive opportunity plot point to force Savannah and John to get back together again. But like, why would you kill someone off just to try and like force these two into being together? Tim was such a good guy at multiple points, so grounded, so non-reactive, so sweet. And it's like, okay, let's take this really nice guy's death and use it as an opportunity to like push our love interest together. And communication issues. So many times where someone loves someone but doesn't know how to express it, so they don't say anything, or one person wants something but can't say it, and it's meant to be like a sexy tension, but it just leads to this really uncomfortable build-up of trust issues and not being honest with each other about where you stand, like not saying how you feel, and often it then explodes and like erupts into this like angry scene where they finally reveal what they've been so pissed off about, and it's just like really unhealthy. If you're with someone where, like, seriously, like, let's stop being children for a minute. Like, we're not in preschool here, and actually be serious. If you're like dating someone and you're too scared to tell them that you fancy them, you're too scared to ask them to hang out more, or maybe ask them a more serious question about the relationship or how they feel about something, or like whatever, feedback, just anything. It could be even like a really superficial thing, like, do you like cheese? If you're so scared to like have that conversation with them, or you feel like you've got to like play it cool all the time, do you even want to be with this person? Like, you don't even feel safe telling them things. Like, how on earth are you going to have a relationship, like, and build something together if you're too scared to even talk to them? Often in these movies though, it all bottles up, no one says how they feel, and then major like disagreements and hurts are resolved in a simple conversation, and then it leads to just a makeout. Like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. They were both like, these two characters were actively being dishonest with each other about their intentions. Their entire relationship is built on a lie. But then, just because the guy chases the girl across the Brooklyn Bridge and says, I love you, that's enough. And also in these movies, they think that by saying I love you, it can resolve things. I have feelings for you. And then they're like, oh, that's so sweet, and they kiss and forget about the whole thing. No, sometimes it would take multiple conversations, or like quite a lengthy thing to talk it out. And in a relationship, that's what you do, is you like really talk about things, you ask for clarification. You don't just say I love you. That's another thing in these movies, tying back to the insta love thing. They say I love you so flippantly. I don't like it. Like the love you phrase is just thrown around like it's nothing. Think of in The Notebook. Noah was writing to Ali like every day for a year, and she wasn't responding. First of all, you wouldn't keep writing every day for a year then. But also, he knew her address, and he never thought to stop by and ask what the hell was going on. Instead, he just sat there like quietly writing to her, wondering why she wasn't replying. Like, what is that? And also, like, Ali said to him, why did you never write to me? Why didn't she write to him? Why was she just sitting there at home waiting for him to reach out? Like, surely the more time that passed and she became an adult, surely she could have found some way of contacting him. Another unhealthy thing that these movies and shows romanticize is codependency. This idea that when you meet someone, you're just going to spend all your time with them and be really wrapped up in them and like lose touch with your friends, etc. Think of when in Dear John, Channing's character tells Savannah, "Oh, you're everything to me, you're all I care about." Red flag. It's just a reiteration of you complete me, you're my other half. I don't like that. It should be 100-100, not you always permanently missing something in yourself until you meet the one you're supposed to be with. And often these characters, especially in romance movies where the central plot is the romance, or if it's just a show with a very central romantic subplot, sometimes it feels like so often they're dating that you never know like if they have friends, if they have hobbies, social life, passion, like what is their life outside of their relationship? Because in real life, like you're not just dating, like you've got an identity outside of that. In fact, often spending loads of time thinking about relationships and how to meet people and searching for love, it's a form of escapism and avoidance of sitting with yourself and really cultivating a life that you enjoy, or you're bored and really lacking joy and fulfillment or self-worth in your life and you're seeking it from others because you feel empty and hollow in some way. In that case, maybe a relationship isn't what you need. And the final thing I want to mention is the love scenes in these movies. Like it goes without saying, but like what even is this? Like it's so bad. Often they play this montage and you're like, what's going on? So first of all, there's no like build up, there's no foreplay, whatever you want to call it. It's just like they kiss and then suddenly it's over within like a minute and it's just done. Okay, like, they're not even kissing for that long. Like it's so weird. And a lot of stuff involving safety, consent, protection, it's just skimmed over. And the idea of like your first time, they're each other's first, and it's just this really satisfying, not at all awkward, confident experience. They both completely know what they're doing and everything goes smoothly, and I'm like, I doubt it. And I'm aware this video comes across as a little bit more cynical. I just want to say that I am still a hopeless romantic. Love is a beautiful thing and it makes the world go round. I'd say it is one of the necessities of our life. However, it's just important to, I guess, be in touch with reality rather than in our fun like delulu land, and actually be like, okay, am I understanding that there is a distinction between reality and movies and the media? So I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you some food for thought. This is slightly different to the usual type of content I do, but I didn't even plan this video. I only came up with this like 10 minutes ago, but I just suddenly felt so inspired and compelled to talk about this. So let me know what you think, and also you can sign up for my Patreon if you want to see extra videos from me for as little as $2 a month. So I will see you guys for the next video.